Doing well. Just going to start you out.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, welcome in. Well,
Thank
we
you.
thought maybe it would be a good thing if you take a minute or two and just kind of tell us about your history and
Okay, sure.
maybe
Sure.
even expand a little bit on kind of what you've seen while you've been in office, and then talk about why you're seeking re-election.
Okay, good, good. Well, of course, my name is George Clayton. I'm the incumbent candidate for the State Board of Education. Won in the last election and didn't spend a lot of money. We collected $3,000 or $4,000, but I primarily had several hundred teachers out walking the streets, as you just said, knocking on doors, and I give them credit for winning, for my winning the election. Now, the State Board of Education, as you know, is the policy-making body for the state of Texas in regards to curriculum, standardized testing, graduation requirements. There's a whole list of things. It also controls the permanent school fund, which is used, the interest on that growth of the interest on that fund is used for the purchase of instructional materials. What we used to call textbooks, you may not know this, but in the last session of the legislature, the word textbook was stricken from the educational lexicon in Texas. It is no longer used. It's been taken out of the law, and the word instructional materials has replaced it, primarily due to the advancement of digital materials in the classroom. So I ran for the State Board of Education because up to the time I moved back to Texas from Florida, was in the real estate business. I had always wanted to be a teacher and finally got to the point where I could actually afford to make the shift, and I did. Kind of late in life, but I did it. That was 12 years ago. When I got back into the classroom after having been out of it, after just graduating, all I did was graduate from high school and go off to college. What I saw in public education was scary, a little frightening. It was not what I had seen when I was in school, and it had degenerated a great deal. So I stuck with it. I tried to make all the changes and help I could in my position at North Dallas High School, where I've been for 12 years. And the opportunity presented itself for me to run for the state board to try to make some changes. I was particularly concerned about the stranglehold standardized testing has on education in Texas. And maybe in the Q&A, because there was a question about it, we can get a little more into detail of that, so I won't do that now. But that's why I ran. What I've discovered is that the state board, like so many elected bodies, is a little sluggish, a little hateful, a little set in its ways. So it's prompted me to run for the re-election. I had never intended to serve more than 2 terms and will not serve more than 2 terms. I don't believe elective office is something a person should come to possess. And we have a great many people who think they do possess an office and have been in it so long. So if I win this, it will be my last time around. Now, you do know when we get back to Austin, we will draw lots as to who gets a 4-year and who gets a 2-year term. That's how that works, because the entire board is up for election at this time. Yeah. So if I draw a 2-year, it'll still be my last term. If I draw a 4-year, I will serve that out. But anyway, there you are.
Okay, so expand on that. I mean, so you went up, you say that standardized testing is a problem. What have you seen since you've been there, and have you been able to turn the tide? What's been the impact of that debate up there?
Now, turning the tide on standardized testing takes an act of the legislature, not the State Board of Education. So what I can do is talk a lot about it, which I do, at every forum, every meeting I go to, not just political events, but many groups ask me to come speak, and I always make a point of talking about standardized testing and the negative effects it's had on really intellectual growth inside the classroom. 30, 40 years ago, Texas, like most states in the United States, adopted a minimum standards foundation for its education program throughout the state. The guarantor of that program is what we call the TAKS test, or now the STAR test, the standardized testing. Attached to it, and something that has evolved over the years, is extreme punitive aspects of that test, both to the student, the teacher, the school, and the district, all of that combined. The punitive aspects of it drive the demeanor of the teaching in the classroom. By which I mean for the teacher to avoid any kind of punitive movement in her or his direction or the school district, the test drives the curriculum rather than the other way around.
What punitive happens?
Well, of course, you get a low rating, an unacceptable rating. And what happens is TEA then sends in, if you've got a low rating 2 or 3 years in a row, TEA then sends in this tremendous troop of people who are supposed to be observers, but I call them spies. They don't offer anything too much constructively, but they're all over the building. And then the teachers themselves are shifted and moved around. Many teachers are put on growth plans. Now, here's the deal. The punitive aspects of the standardized test are aimed toward the teacher. There is not anything ever aimed toward the student at all.
Or the administrator.
Well, in some cases, administrators, a principal will be moved, shifted around. That's that mid-level management. Let me move the principal out and everything will be better in that building. That's not effective at all. Never has been. I've seen it happen at North Dallas and various other schools. It's just not effective. Sometimes it's best to leave that principal alone. But the principal of a high school now, and I'm in secondary, so I'm going to refer most of my comments will be secondary, will proceed to set up a plan in that school that advances the test and not the district curriculum. Now, some people talk about the standards that are set in the test as curriculum. The test covers minimal standards inside a classroom. The district creates the curriculum. It is not created inside the TEA or inside that test. Let me give you an example. A standard in ELA, English Language Arts, might be the student will understand the use of nouns in declarative sentence. That would be a standard. Curriculum would say the student will understand the use of the word beastie and creepers as nouns as used in William Golding's Lord of the Flies. That's curriculum. So what happens is, because the school is rated on whether the kids pass the test or not, what we have as curriculum is this rote memorization process of those standards. And curriculum that builds the intellect and advances the intellect of the student is laid aside. Okay. Now we have this issue. Starting with the EOC, the end of course exam, the districts are obligated to include 15% of that score in the grade book. Where up to this point, TACS did not enter the grade book, and TOS prior to that, and TEAMS prior to that, was not part of the grade book. To me, that's an intrusion of local control, so I was opposed to it, but this is legislative, it doesn't come out of the state board. This creates a problem because most midterm and year-end exams are already 15%. So what we're going to find are a lot of districts who are going to drop their curriculum testing and substitute the minimum standards testing for the 15% grade, which only means that the standardized test is augmented even more in the classroom rather than the curriculum.
What about the STAR test?
That is the EOC.
That's the EOC?
Yeah,
okay.
that is the EOC. In secondary, it's called EOC because they're all end-of-course exams.
Okay.
Okay, but it's in the STAR program. It's part of the STAR examination. Okay. Now, I brought you something you might be interested in. I did a little graphing. You're going to look at this and go, what is this? I'm going to explain it to you.
Is this all the same thing? Just
Yes, it is. This morning at home, my home office, I ran out of white paper, so I used blue.
Well, it gives us some color here.
So you think that the LAR
here's
and
some more.
the Science and Social Studies text need to be rewritten?
Well, the ELAR text has been. Those are in the classroom already.
Oh, boy.
Science text, the legislature did not appropriate money for those. They appropriated only enough money for additional instructional materials and all of it online. So if the district doesn't set up that program, the teachers will not have it. we'll talk about the appropriation and some money and how it comes out of the permanent school fund in just a minute. What you have in front of you here, and this is from North Dallas High School, but by no means is this exclusive to North Dallas High School. We'll give you some idea of the stranglehold testing, rather than educating our kids, has on education. If you look at the top line, I've got practice test, all core, meaning 4 core subjects: English, social studies, science, and math. The school is going to require in August that we give a practice tax test immediately when we come into the school. North Dallas High School has 1,500 kiddos, so that's 1,500 tests times the core subject.
Times 4.
Times 4. So you're looking at 6,000 tests. Okay. Not about a week later, we will do what's called a common assessment. A common assessment is written by each department based on the tax format. It'll be 10 or 15 questions, be a very, very, very short tax test. That common assessment will then be graded times 4, and that's done once every 2 weeks between August and the end of the year. So when you hear people say, well, they don't teach to the test, that's all they are teaching to is the test. Because once one common assessment is done and evaluated, then the next common assessment is created from that evaluation. Now, North Dallas High School, like many high schools now, are on a block schedule, which means we see students once every other day. So when you consider every 2 weeks we're doing common assessments, what you have to conclude is that all the kids are doing are common assessment tests, and there's very little teaching and learning going on in the classroom. I was asked the other day at a forum, why is Texas rated so low in education? In almost every category, we're 45, 46, 47, depending on who's doing the evaluating. You can't expect the students to do better if all you're doing is minimum standards testing constantly.
So
That's where our students are, and when they graduate, that's where they are. Well, that's one reason I ran for the State Board of Education, because I know the State Board of Education is actually the body that, yes.
I'm sorry, so this is the testing schedule throughout the whole year? These are all
This
the
is
numbers of
essentially the
tests they've got.
testing schedule throughout the entire year. Now,
When do they
what I
learn?
didn't put in here,
When do they learn?
they don't.
That's his point.
They don't. What I didn't put in here
Oh my God.
are the tests that the teacher has decided is warranted based on what's being taught in the classroom,
the
which is very
material,
little
so that's on
material.
top of that.
So I left that out, because really all the time is occupied with this right here.
Yeah, I
This is
can
the
see
whole
that.
deal.
This is the whole deal. I'm knocking my head against a brick wall for years, and finally ran for the state board, went down there and found that they have more brick walls in Austin than we do in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very difficult to get the legislature to listen,
George, let me ask
to me or anybody else about this. But I want to tell you something. It has destroyed education as some of us may remember it in school.
George, in your
yes.
assessment then, so is public education then, based on kind of what we've seen here, and all this bureaucracy, is this the Titanic that can't get turned around, or
No.
it can get turned around? Okay.
Which brings me to my next. Oh, yeah, you're great. You're almost like I paid you for this.
Did you guys work this out?
Beforehand.
Let me tell you what drives this. The biggest influence in Texas in education is Pearson Publishing. It is the single company that publishes the test. It does not have to bid, because there's not another company that can touch it. Pearson gets contracts every 5 years to publish these examinations, and their lobby is huge in Austin, Texas. Pearson essentially controls, and has for a number of years, education in this state.
Is it where
How are they
Representative
fund-
Shapiro going there?
I don't know.
Going somewhere else.
She is not, it's not Pearson.
Not Pearson.
Mm-mm.
So Pearson, are they contributing directly to candidates,
Oh.
or are they using a PAC? Or how
No,
are
they
doing
use a
it?
PAC. They wouldn't
Right.
contribute directly. They're
What's
not gonna
their
run that
PAC?
risk. You know what, I don't know, 'cause I don't associate with them. I don't ask them for anything. When we go down to the State Board of Education, when we're in session, and I'll be down there week after next, if you've been down there, you know that the State Board is set up in a circle. And 15 separate desks, kind of a small legislative type setup. There is a stanchion of purple ropes that are around the chair, and the people, the gallery, they're not allowed to come. They can come up to the rope, but not allowed to step over the rope. Pearson always has 8, 9, 10 people there every meeting. And the minute we adjourn or recess for a break, they're all over that rope. They're talking to members. I have never had a conversation with them. Never. I'm afraid I would have a negative conversation in their regard as far as they were concerned. Anyway, let me give you some figures here, and I want to tell you that the figures I've got here came right from the Texas Education Agency. It took me weeks to get staff down there to prepare this for me. Finally, when I got it, one of the associate commissioners said, "This is going to stagger you. You're not going to like what you see. So I'm going to pass this on to you because I think this should be made public." I've tried to make it public wherever I go. In the school year 2000 to 2001, which was the first year of a 5-year contract for Pearson, Pearson was paid $41 million taxpayer dollars to publish the standardized test. Now, hear me, I'm saying just publish it. The cost of administering the test inside the districts is not included in that figure. I'd have to go to every district to get that and then compile a larger figure.
But they're paid from every district as well to help administer the test? On top of the 41 million?
No, it just costs
No, but
teachers.
it costs
Okay.
the
All right.
district. The district literally shuts down itself for several days.
Right.
Formats change, teachers shift around, time is lost,
it.
so it's a cost. It's an
Mhm.
expense to the
Right.
district.
Okay.
Okay, but anyway, it was $41 million. At the end of that 5-year contract period, which ended in the year 2005, for that 5-year period, Pearson had been paid $259 million, rounded down actually, $259 million. Now, if we jump to last school year, 2010-2011, which was again the first year of a 5-year contract, Pearson was paid $91 million to
For 1
publish
year now.
for 1 year.
What
From
was that, 91 million?
41 to 91 million. Do you see who's driving education in the state of Texas?
Yeah.
At the end of this 5-year contract, Pearson will have been paid $469 million, almost a $500 million taxpayer dollars, which represents about an 80% increase from that first 5-year contract. Yet, the student population who take the test only increased 18%. 18%. An 80% increase in the cost, only an 18% increase in student population
What was the
required
amount
to
again at the end of the contract? Which contract would end in 2015?
2015, $469 million. Now that's just to Pearson alone. Here's the rub as far as I'm concerned, because I'm an educator. Last year they were paid the $91 million. They received that money. This year they received another $91 million, and they received the money this year for a test that does not even generate itself on district accountability ratings. So I wrote to the commissioner, to the governor, officially, said, can't we just skip the test this year? Because all the districts are holding their accountability ratings from the previous year. This always happens when there's a shift from one test to the next. And I contacted Senator Shapiro. Her answer to me was, oh, we can't do that. We've already paid the money. So let me get this right. We've paid $91 million to Pearson, but we're laying off teachers. Is that the way it works in Texas? That's the way it works in Texas.
In Shapiro's area, yeah.
Yeah, well. So we're going to give that test this year. It does not change accountability ratings for any school in any district, but Pearson has its $91 million. We gave that money last year, $91 million, which was the first year of the budget shortfall that the legislature had to deal with. Thousands of teachers lost their job, but Pearson got its money.
Yeah.
Did they
So,
also-
this right here, Pearson causes this.
Yeah. And this causes lowering academic standards and.
And that's
kids
why
that-
Texas rates so low in education nationally. That's why right there.
I don't see why anybody has a problem with this.
What? Well, okay, we won't go there. This is
Well,
an interview.
well, there are people out there who, let me tell you something. There's a, I want to call it a cottage industry, but it's something bigger now. Districts are always looking for the remedy of the ills of education, especially our large urban districts. And many of our suburban districts are now large urban districts. I graduated from Garland High School when there was 2 high schools. There were 8 high schools there now. Not long ago, I was talking to Dr. Colwell out there, the superintendent, and he considers himself the superintendent of an urban school district, not a suburban school district. And when you listen to him and listen to the troubles that he has out there, they sound just like DISD. And if you think that you're immune up here in this northern part of Collin County, be wary, be aware, because it's coming your way. First thing you're going to find is that some of your schools are going to be dropping below standard. And remember, the standards are based on the test. When you drive by a school that
And
says,
that's the minimum.
this is minimum.
That's bare minimum.
Minimum. This is bare minimum, skills-based bare minimum testing. Totally.
So they
I have a
drop.
question for you, George.
Yes, ma'am.
A couple of years ago, there was a representative that decided that we needed computers on every desk.
Okay.
You remember, he was out in the urban area. I mean, I can't remember the state rep's name, but he lost his raise because he was apparently probably knew the person that was going to be supplying the computers, let's just say. So.
Imagine that in Texas.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Do you think this is a good idea to have computers in
Well,
the classroom like
let me say this. It's inevitable that the digital age is going to work itself into the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
That it is 100% in every classroom, in every course, I don't see a need for it. You're probably going to be shocked at this, but teachers are told these days, do not lecture to your students. They don't learn that way anymore. That's old stuff.
Well,
Teachers are marginalized in the classroom by all of this and now computers. Now, in some cases, for example, North Dallas High School just received a $2
We have
million
1 minute left, I'm sorry.
Okay, a $2 million grant with which we bought some digital materials. For a lot of the kids, that was transformative. It's been a plus for them. But I think you have to use it kind of where you need it. But to suggest that it's for everything all the time, I wouldn't go there. There's something to be said for the knowledge of the teacher, a pen and a paper,
Yep.
you know,
I
and
agree.
some reading.
the problem that I had with it was this: the students were going to be taking these home and bringing them back. And
Well,
I
that
just
won't
don't-
work.
That's not going to
No.
work because there'll be laws.
That
there'll
won't work.
be
Another problem
programs.
is this tremendous expense.